You guys are hiking around, wandering around. You didn't know you were in Iran, and people couldn't imagine how that happened. How did that happen?
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions. For starters, people don't really usually know that northern Iraq is a semi-autonomous part of Iraq. No American has been captured or killed there in years, and it's actually a burgeoning tourist industry.
Northern Iraq? I could take my wife to a cute little B&B and we could have a nice weekend?
Millions of people go every year.
No kidding.
Shane and I were living in Syria, so it's a a neighboring country.
Right.
It's a place
And
that
you're
it
a
makes sense for
journalist?
us to go.
Yeah. I mean, this is your profession. You report on that area. You're not afraid of the Middle East.
Right.
And I guess like anywhere else in the world, and Joshua, you're a journalist too?
No.
What do you?
I'm a PhD student in history right now. At the time, I was teaching on a study abroad program, university program internationally.
So you're global travelers. And you're not really, you're in an area where you're not expected to be in danger.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Still, isn't there some kind of blinking like Iraq? Isn't there like even in The Wicked Witch with the Wizard of Oz, there's like, I wouldn't go in there if I were you. Is there any thought in your mind that you're so near the border?
No, we didn't realize how close we were to the border, and that was, one of the big problems. We had visited a couple cities in Iraqi Kurdistan, visited some old castles and museums, and we wanted to kind of get out of town. We've been seeing pictures of mountains, and we asked our hotel manager if there was a place that we could go, and he and a taxi driver told us to go to this place called Ahmedawa, where there was a waterfall. We went there, and there were hundreds of people there camping out, families, kind of local tourists, and we camped out, and then the next day we hiked up a trail, and we hiked pretty far, and we didn't realize how close we were to the border.
Good hikers.
It's amazing how different life is than the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for pointing that out. But I mean, like, I go hiking. I love to hike. So I could see myself. And when I go to a strange place, I go, oh, is there a good hike around here? And a lot of times the hotels, they're geared to people who like to sit and eat at the buffet, and they don't really know about hiking. So that you get some concierge, even in the U.S., who says, I don't know, some people say they go up there. So I could see, I would wander up, and but I would be in Canada.
Yeah.
That would be so bad.
Yeah.
All right. So what was the first moment you had where you were alarmed? Describe that moment. You're hiking along. Describe, if you can, the terrain a little bit and what it felt like.
We had taken a rest stop on one side of the road. When we got back on the road, which we later find out was the border, a guy waves us forward, and we realized we had just taken that rest stop on the Iranian side, and he has waved us over further onto the Iranian side.
So he's waving at you, come on over.
A few minutes later,
and you're crossing the border as he's waving at you?
Yeah, well, we're like walking on the border. We're talking about
you're on the road, which is the border. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a few feet this way, this way. And the people, these are border guards, is what they're doing. They're kind of in this remote outpost. They take us, they look at our passports. When they send us down the hill, they put us in an SUV and send us down the hill. They immediately question us, and some of the police officers start talking about what America has done to their country, and it becomes quickly a political thing, something that's between the governments, and we were kind of like, well, I remember thinking, like, that's between the governments. This isn't. They'll just release us once they realize we have nothing to do with our government.
Right. And is this a little like a speed trap in Mayberry where Sheriff Barney pulls you over? I know you're going to love this analogy. But is this a little bit? Are these remote outpost guards like, hey, we got ourselves some Americans? Are they enjoying it in a mall cop kind of way?
I think
they were definitely surprised when they saw our passports, and surprised to see us at all, to see foreigners in that area. It's definitely not expected that anyone would hike that far behind the tourists.
You got a good workout in that day. It was a good hike.
We did.
And then now how fast are you in prison? And they accused you of espionage, which of course is ridiculous. But what happens next?
For a few days, we're kind of driven around the western part of the country and passed off from one group to the next. We don't know who we're with, where we are, and we're interrogated, and then we're driven all the way across halfway across the country to Tehran, the capital, and we're passed off to another group, and we're blindfolded, put in a van, and driven into the central prison. We didn't know actually they were in the central prison for quite a while.
in Iran and you're blindfolded and you're being driven somewhere.
Yeah.
Scared for your life, or just scared to this nasty prison? What runs through your head?
It's like there are always multiple narratives, and I, for weeks, even months, forced myself to believe the most optimistic one, and it really wasn't until, and one narrative says they're taking us home, we're going to be back, in Syria any day now, in our beautiful apartment, and the other narrative just says this is really bad,
This
and
could
I have
be
no
bad,
idea
it
if
could
we're
be a
going to
long
get out
time.
of it. But after 2 months of interrogation, my interrogator said, Sarah, you're not going to court. I told you you were going to go to court and then go home. I know you're innocent, but this is political, and I don't know when you're going to get out of here. And that was like the big.
That's bad.
Yeah, a ton of bricks.
Okay. Now, that's just so much, obviously, to talk about, and people should buy the book because I can only touch on a few things. But the interrogation, the isolation, what do you call that when you're alone in a room? The solitary confinement. I've read that now anything more than 15 days is considered torture because the average person will go nuts. How much solitary did each of you have?
Josh and I were in solitary. We were all in solitary for 4 months, and then Josh and I were put together, and Sarah remained in solitary for over a year. And
410 days.
410 days. So that's beyond torture. That's torture times 30 times.
Yeah, and people need to realize that this doesn't only happen in Iran, solitary confinement. I mean, I was in for 410 days. There are many people in our country in for years and many for decades. And not always for violent infractions inside prison. It's gotten completely out of
And
control.
who is it that came up with the 15-day limit? Is that like the UN?
Special rapporteur on torture, yeah.
And so you're in solitary. This is tough. What is in your head when you're in solitary? In the movies, when people are in solitary. No, I'm not going to do one of those. In the movies, when people are in solitary.
I remember in the Shawshank Redemption.
It messes with your head because we need to socialize. We're social creatures, right?
Yeah, it becomes very clear in solitary that people are people through other people. That there's no way to see yourself if you don't have someone to look at, if you don't have someone to react to something you say, if I felt like my different parts of me, my different like selves, was just getting stripped away. Whether I'm a student, a worker, a friend, a lover, a brother, a father, a son, any of these things, and now I feel like a body. It just feels like there's nothing to give me any sense. I remember I found a pen that was like hidden in the vent that I guess a past prisoner had put there. And when I got that, I was able to write myself a little journal on tissue paper and then eventually sneak notes to these guys. And that like little bit of communication just made me see how desperate and how, you ask like what we think about, and I realized I wasn't thinking. It was like my mind was just going dull.
I got a couple quick questions. Do any of you speak the local language?
No.
I speak Arabic, but
not the local
Farsi.
dialect. I mean, that
No.
must be right there that they can just speak amongst themselves with that must be torture in itself, not knowing what the hell they're talking about, planning for you, any of that stuff.
Well,
right?
we had translators for interrogation.
But I'm sure they didn't. You weren't privy to everything they were saying. Though.
No, of course
Right?
not.
Did you ever wonder, like, what is he saying, and how much of it is the translator?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, that's another level of like
Seriously,
fear.
And when you find a pen, is there a moment inside your? I mean, you're already days and days and days without human contact. What you said about people are only people to other people. That's some. I had never contemplated that kind of perspective. But when you find a pen and you contemplate making a journal, that's kind of feel like a life or death decision. Because if you get caught with a journal and you're already in prison for espionage, what was that moment like?
Well, we got caught.
You got caught. You get caught, by the way, when you're in a little room.
Yeah, they raided the room. They saw the secret correspondence we had by putting notes in the trash can, where we would have a little courtyard time, and that was actually the worst time because they. The idea that things were slowly getting better was what I grabbed onto with my life.
That's what you cling to.
A little bit
your
better.
little scenarios of how you're about to get out. Yeah.
And so when we got caught with that, we had been slowly seeing each other for a half hour once a week, a half hour twice a week, just Shane, Sarah, and I having a little time together. And when we got caught with a pen, they took that away. And I just had this feeling like if things get worse, I don't know how I can deal with it.
Well,
Things did get worse.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, you're horrified, you're traumatized, and at some point you've got to be you got to be mad. You got to be mad at somebody. Do you guys have any animosity to Iranian people, the Iranian government, the United States government? Who do you?